big thanks to Paul for sorting this out and giving me the opportunity to come and say hello. I've got loads of value from Blue Oak, so I couldn't really say no when he asked me about coming and spout some rubbish about property development to you guys. Let's get moving on. So I'm going to briefly go through my background, how I ended up picking property development, a little bit about the business. I'm going to take you through the trials and tribulations of some of our more recent projects. Hopefully I won't put everyone off property development by the end of the hour. And then I thought it'd be maybe helpful for people who maybe aren't so used to appraising land if I walk through our process, some of the things to look for, some of the pitfalls and some of the things you need to bear in mind when you're looking at potential new build sites. And then there'll be a bit of time at the end for questions and answers. I've already warned Paul, no difficult ones or else I'll have to come back. So a little bit about my background. I spent most of my career in procurement. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's buying stuff. So everything from widgets to bus parts to a lot of services. So I spent a lot of time negotiating, doing deals, ended up somehow specialising in property, big estates. So everything from asbestos to X-ray machines. I had quite a big team, which was great. Very different to now where we've got to do everything yourself. But, you know, working for big PLCs, just being a number was beginning to get to me a little bit. And I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different. I'd enjoyed property and one of my best mates is an architect. We were chatting in the pub quite a lot about doing something together for a while, and Friday Club Developments was born in 2018. I've got a couple of little lads. We've named them the Chaos Twins. They're not actual twins, but they do cause trouble wherever they go. They're 5 and 3 and are constantly fighting and tearing up the house, which is fun. And then just a little bit about what I like to do outside. Travel. Not so much this year. The rest of them, socialising, drinking and eating, probably a bit too much. So moving swiftly on, I will tell you a little bit about us. No one, I'm going to tell you about the journey. Feel free to chip in if you've got any questions, guys. I can't actually see you. I'm not sure whether that's... Paul, do you know if I can...
Yeah, so where have you got like a screen with yourself on there, Tony?
No, I'm just looking at my slides, literally.
Does it got a little box with your name on?
Yeah.
So if you hover over that box, it should give you a few choices: show active speaker, show thumbnail video, or show grid video, and that should bring up some pretty faces for you.
That's the one. That's better. I can see people now rather than just my slides. Cool.
But what we'll do, mate, I'll do all the admin of the questions for you. So as they come, I'll just ping them out if that's all right. Yeah,
perfect, mate. Thank you. Yeah, that's better. It's good to see people at the other side rather than just my slides. Okay, cool. So I say we started from scratch, which was not far from the truth. I did have a couple of buy-to-lets in Chorley. I've still got them. My dad sort of got me into it by accident. He was working for a couple of property developers doing kitchens and bathrooms. And he realised what people were doing and said, well, we could do this for ourselves rather than working for other developers. So we got a couple of buy-to-lets each, basically 2 3-bed terraced houses, knackered, needed full refurbs. We bought them in cash. We kept all the money in. We didn't refinance or anything fancy like that because that was completely alien to us at the time. We did a little flip, made quite a bit of money on that, was quite happy with that. And then everything was going great until the end of 2014, when one of our first tenants stopped paying his rent. Up to this point, he'd done quite well. He'd paid every month on the button, just lost his job. So that sort of put us off a little bit, expanding what we were doing. We also then, Harry came along. I changed jobs, and we sort of, we didn't lose faith in property, but we didn't do anything else for quite a while. And then in 2018, I was getting a bit hacked off with where I was working, which was Interserve. I ended up, from having a pretty easy life, getting the world's worst boss. Within about a month, I decided I was leaving, and I made a swift exit. I didn't really know what I was going to do at that point. I just thought, well, I'd work a bit more up north, stop traveling so much, spend a bit more time at home. Probably didn't want to work 80, 90 hours a week anymore. So I thought, how am I going to do that? I'd just go and buy a few more properties. So I was chatting to Sean about it. He's like, well, if you're serious about doing something, it's not really buy to lets or anything, but something had just come up and someone had approached him with a bit of land. He'd basically been approached by one of his neighbours who had a big garden with a block of flats on it, to ask him how many houses he could put in it. So we had a look at it, and he said, well, instead of me just doing the drawings, do you fancy having a look at it as a project? So I said, yeah, why not? We'll have a look at it. Within about 2 weeks of looking at it, I realised I was pretty out of my depth. I didn't understand what I was doing. We were trying to do appraisals. I didn't know, anything about the build process. I had no idea about finance. I was like, shit, I better go learn about this stuff pretty quick, because we're about to find £500,000 and spend it on something. So I went and did some education. I did a couple of courses with Paul McFadden in Scotland. I found that really good from an education point of view. But, more importantly, the network that I met through going on those courses and the mastermind, I made some amazing contacts and people that I still speak to every week, from that first intensive weekend, where everyone gets you fired up and goes, yeah, you come out and go, yeah, I'm going to make $1 million sourcing next month. Didn't quite happen like that, but it did. I did meet a huge amount of people, and I certainly believe that if you're starting out, getting in a room with that sort of people, with the right people around you and the right trainers, who are doing it for the right reasons, is definitely something I completely advocate. I know that a lot of people are against property education, but I think it's a great thing. So back to sort of projects and stuff. Whilst I was doing all this networking and sitting in conference rooms learning stuff about property, we had submitted our first scheme in Fallowfield. We'd managed to tap up a private investor who was going to fund the project for us. Everything was going brilliantly. We were in Vegas for Sean's wedding. Came back on the 10th of September with a bit of a hangover, to a planning rejection notice from Manchester City Council. They'd not spoke to us throughout the process, no warning. So we were just stunned that it got rejected. There was no explanation. We were just, everything we've sort of been working for and planning completely tipped on its head overnight. I'll go into a few more details about that when we get onto that project. We then went out and said, right, okay, well, we're not having that. We're not taking this easy. Let's go and find something with planning. Let's get something out of the ground, and we'll work on Fallowfield at the same time. We managed to find something on Rightmove. We put an offer in, and we got it. So we obviously paid a little bit too much for it, but we had our project and we were happy. We now knew what we were doing the next year. We both wanted to go full time. We wanted to make it more from a project into a business. And we started really thinking, okay, we've got something here. We think we've got the right skills between us that complement each other. Sean's construction and design experience, my sort of relationship and commercial stuff. We thought it fitted quite well, and it was all starting to sort of gel together. We poached one of my old staff to come and run our accounts. I'd done a flip with one of the guys who I met on my training course in Scotland, in Cumbernauld. We then went and got development finance with Fallowfield. So, you know, in the space of a couple of years, although it feels now like we've not built millions of houses, when I started writing this down the other night, all the stuff that we've actually been through and done, you actually realise all the different steps that you're taking towards where you are now. 2020, interesting year. So we completed style at the beginning of the year, just ready to let everyone round, and then lockdown came. Fuck. We just took on 3 new people to start a construction business, and 2 weeks into their new jobs, we sent them all home. We were just like everyone else, a little bit caught off guard by what was happening, and you know, we had no understanding of what that meant for everything that was going on. We had a project half finished, we had a project up for sale, we were a lot of money in debt. We just set up a new business, so it's been an interesting summer. But I feel like we're coming out of the back end. We've just acquired another building, which is a commercial to resi project, and I'll go into detail on some of the projects now. Is that all right for everyone? I feel like I'm just doing a lot of talking. Cheers, Andy.
Spot on, mate. Spot on.
Tell me if I'm waffling on too much. You can wave your fingers at me or whatever. Okay, so we are FCD. I've explained where Friday Club Developments comes from. We used to spend many Friday afternoon in the pub next to Sean's house, plotting world domination and not actually doing very much. A couple of years later, we got round to it. We're very proud of what we've done so far. I think it'll come across when we go through some of the stuff. We're really passionate about what we're doing and doing it right. We see a lot of other people in the space who potentially make a bit more money. We're really proud to do what we do and to a high standard. We're focused at the minute on residential. Sean's got a lot of background in commercial, so we're open to that. It just happens that the projects have come along to now that they've been resi focused. So come on to the case studies. So this was supposed to be the second project, obviously, but ended up being the first. This was a little derelict bungalow that the vendors had planning for 2 4-bed detached exec homes. It was on with an agent, on Rightmove, quite a lot of interest. We ended up in a bit of a bidding war, so ended up paying a little bit more than we hoped. We then, what we found when we started, construction was quite busy, development was quite busy. We were 2 new guys who turned up with no background. We really struggled to get contractors on board, people that were willing to work with us, especially when I told them I'd been on some property courses. I think that put them off even more. But we managed to get a contractor signed up as a main contractor. They did a grand job, and we can't complain. There were a few bits and pieces, as you get with any project, that we thought could have been better, but on the whole, we were very pleased working with them. And, you know, it's helped us to get a track record up and running. We started this project in April 19. Took about a year, just with a bit of bad weather. You know, we started getting some material shortages and stuff towards the end. And we finally sold the second plot just last week. So we are over the moon with that, and luckily the guys that are living in the houses are too. I think that's a testament to what we've done. They love their house. So, you know, when we're getting text messages saying this house is awesome, everything's top quality, that sort of made all the pain of getting there worthwhile. Things that come through some of the case studies, you'll see we've been working on this shit for a long time. There's nothing that we've boshed out in 6 weeks. Everything's took years. And that's one of the things about development. It's not an overnight £250,000 profit. It just doesn't exist. And it's not, it's hard. It's hard. So this project was funded completely with a private investor. We sent out a couple of pretty basic PDF documents with some plans and some numbers. Luckily, one of Sean's clients who'd worked with him for a long, long time put faith in us and offered to lend us most of the money. He wanted us to put a little bit of skin in the game, so we put 50k of our own cash in. I don't think that's unfair when you're asking someone to give you over £1 million. So we did that. We built a good, brilliant relationship with Tony. One of the things that we learned, the initial negotiation stuff, we'll find that was all pretty good. What we probably didn't do with our JV partner was formalise how things were going to work, what was going to happen, sort of different points. What if they didn't sell? What if it ran on for 6 months? We didn't think about every possibility. You know, at one point in summer, when people couldn't do viewings, we were like, shit, this interest is going to kill us at some point. We need to stop the tap. We need to rent them out. And Tony was like, chill, guys. I'll just stop charging you interest. The market will come back. And having that sort of understanding from your investor was key for us. And, you know, it was invaluable. You know, development finance companies have been pretty understanding too, because we've got some of those as well. But, you know, the contract that we had in place didn't cover any of that stuff. It's all been sort of negotiated after it. And a lot of that stuff we will now factor in our agreements going forward. Working with the main contractor, we appointed one contractor to do everything. At this stage, it was probably the right thing to do, but you do pay for overheads, prelims, their health and safety, their insurance, some stuff you end up paying double for, which riles me a little bit with my procurement background. And other stuff like we'll spec something, but they will go and find something that's a little bit cheaper. It still fits the spec, but it wasn't quite what we intended because we hadn't nailed it down to the nth degree. Those sort of things started, you know, getting to us a little bit towards the end because we were really passionate about the finishes and we didn't want anything not finished the way we wanted it. So we ended up setting up our own construction business on the back of that. Snagging was one of the things that we didn't do thoroughly enough. We were in a rush. We were starting other projects. We were buying other buildings. It all looked good, but there were a couple of things that when the new buyers came round a couple of times, they started to notice a couple of things weren't right. Unfortunately, because of the period of time between us finishing the project and actually getting the people through the door, because of COVID, we're now out of our defect period. So we've ended up buying stuff and paying stuff that potentially we could have got the contractor to pick up. Now that's just a simple lesson that we learned the hard way. If you're going to do some snagging, make sure the person that is doing it has got a thorough process, even appoint a third party. You know, there's companies that'll do it for a few £100 and they'll go down and they've got a proper system, checklist, and, you know, iPads, they're going around and boshing everything. I think that's a definite thing that we'll be doing going forward. Because you're walking around this house every week, you're seeing it, you get a bit blind to what's going on. You don't notice all the creaks in the floor because you're looking at other stuff. I think that's something we really learned. We also, because of, is that a question or someone in the pub? It's probably not someone in the pub, is it? So one of the things we didn't do, we spanked our budget by the time the end of the project. We didn't have any money to stage it. These houses are 2,000 square foot, so they are big lumps. You walked in and it was empty. It's like, oh shit. And, you know, we wanted to put good quality stuff in. We were getting quotes for 15, 20 grand. We were like, oh my God. But it did, you know, it made a difference. Every job we do from now on will be staged. Definite, massive difference. As soon as the one next door was furnished, people could go in. They actually thought it was bigger, even though it had loads of furniture in it, which I found really bizarre. Sean's used to visualizing things. You can see stuff that, you know, you'd expect an architect to do, hopefully. But, you know, I'm rubbish. If there's not a chair there, I can't see where it'd go. Final lesson on this one. I mean, these are the key lessons. We've learned hundreds of lessons on each project. Marketing and estate agents. So when we put in our marketing costs at the beginning of this project, we stuck the estate agent's fee in. That was it. Estate agent will sell it. They were all right when we bought it. They've got loads of boards round. We don't need to do anything else. The houses will be mega. It'll all be fine. Unfortunately, we didn't nail down exactly what they were going to do. So I think what they're used to in that neck of the woods is people walking in with suitcases full of cash and going, can I buy that mansion? And it didn't happen. And we were going, what are they doing? All these people are showing around, we're not getting any feedback. So I've seen a couple of Instagram posts that they've done, but they've never done one about us. And it's like, do they just not like our house? Are they sending people somewhere else? We just really couldn't understand why we were getting nothing. So we ended up having quite a long-winded exit from this estate agent, but it really made us think about the overall picture. You know, this is a 715 grand house. This is a big decision for someone. You know, Saturday girl from the estate agent just opening the door for him isn't good enough to get that sale over the line. We really needed to think about how we were going to market ourselves. We wondered whether it was us. We've got no track record. You know, we had a website, but we were like, is it because this is our first project? We just like, we couldn't work it out. So after months of wrangling, we ended up doing a procurement exercise and finding a marketing consultant who might be with us today. Give us a wave. So for those of you that can't see it, Joe Saint has been working with us for the last 4 months on upping our marketing game. So in the next couple of weeks, we will be everywhere. We've done a full rebrand. Joe chucked that grenade in after a couple of months. But what we really like about Jo is she spent a lot of time understanding us, the business, what we're about, rather than just coming up with a pre-packaged strategy. This is how you sell houses. So we love the stuff that she's done. The website's due any day now, so we'd love feedback from you guys, whether you think it's any good, whether you think it could be improved. Really up for that sort of feedback, if that's all right. Thank you, Jo. She's also responsible for making sure I spelt Rendezvous right on the slides.
Tony, just before you move on there, mate, just got a quick question from Melinda.
No worries, buddy. Go ahead. What
sort of budget would you need to allow for the staging?
So for the for these homes, we got quoted between 3 and 20,000 from different suppliers. The people that were at 3 grand, really nice people, but more akin to staging HMOs and house shares. We looked at the stuff and we thought we can't put that stuff in this house because it sort of brings everything else down. The people that wanted to put in the really good stuff came out at 20 grand and we were just like, oh shit. We actually, on Fallowfield, which is this one, We bought a load of furniture for this. We had an interior designer help us. She charged us a fee for the interior design, and then we bought the furniture. And we spent in total, I think we spent £6,000 on furniture for this house, which was a 4-bed house, and a couple of grand in fees for the interior designer. But that, you know, again, we really think it adds that wow factor when people come in. They can see where they're going to eat the tea. They can see where they're going to watch the telly. And, you know, they go to the bathroom and it feels like someone lives there. Mr. Thomas, got a question?
Did you let them keep the furniture?
We've not actually flogged that one yet. So we have been dangling that carrot with them, saying if you reserve it by a certain day, you can have the furniture.
Yeah, sure. I suppose if you've got enough going on, you could just move them on to the next one, but otherwise just store it somewhere, can't you?
Yeah, ideally, we'd just leave it where it is and get a couple of grand off them for it. We'd be more than happy with that.
Nice. Yeah, nice, mate. Thank you.
No worries. So, Moseley Gardens, this was the planning rejection. We went in for 3 townhouses. As I said before, it's a pretty big back garden on the back of a block of flats, but there was precedent and there was development each side of it. Actually comes in off a little private road. So it's a lovely little area, and it's really, really central for the stuff that's going on in the area. Obviously, we got a planning rejection. We then had to change investors. So our original investor wanted to hold it. We then go into a different style of house that suited more the sales exit. So we had to change investor. That investor didn't want to fully fund it. So we then had to get development finance for the rest. We managed to renegotiate the purchase price with the landowner, and we actually managed to do a little bit better on our finance costs and some of our other costs because we took a bit more time to sort ourselves out in terms of the project. So it did benefit us in some ways, but obviously we were, you know, I think we lost probably 12 months in between going to planning, changing the planning, having to renegotiate, having to refinance it. All that stuff takes time, and it's always longer than you think. So we've ended up finishing this in August. They are still on the market, which now appears to be getting pretty slow after the bump that we got, the sort of pent-up demand. We've got quite a few viewings, but we didn't quite get the people we were expecting. So what I mean by that is we were getting a lot of Asian families round, and we were expecting young professionals, students that had graduated, and the Asian families that wanted to live around there already had quite big families, and it's open plan living downstairs this house, so it's not really set up for how that market works. And we got some brilliant feedback on the houses. But they just weren't that keen. They wanted separate rooms downstairs. That's how they wanted to live. So we completely dropped the ball with that. We sort of built houses for a market without actually going into detail about, you know, does that young professional move out of the city centre to Fallowfield? They probably don't. They want to live in Didsbury. They want to live in the Heatons. You know, they want to live in slightly different areas. They don't want to live where they went to uni because they've already spent 3 years there. So we dropped the ball though, and we should have changed the layout. Obviously, it's a bit more difficult to do once you've finished the project. So we are now going through the process of changing our exit. We're going to rent them out. We've actually got quite a good rent. We've got quite a lot of interest, and we've got people going through referencing. So it's not the end of the world, but we're going to end up leaving some cash, which was the profit in the deal, and not being able to release and reuse it. Apart from that, the other lesson on this deal was going into development finance. So first time for us, we went direct to a lender. We didn't go through a broker. I went for that because I wanted to go with someone that I knew. I wanted the lender that I knew the person I'd be dealing with, the relationship director from the lender. That's turned out to be quite good, especially as we've gone through all these problems. They've been really good with their communication and stuff. What it probably meant we didn't do is we didn't have the broker explaining what the process was, what all the different forms that were going to come, all the different bits of security you've got to give. You know, there was lots of paperwork, lots of, oh, we didn't realise we were going to have to do that. Oh, we've got to put a private guarantee down, personal guarantee. And we were like, okay. And you sort of, you know, you've already got planning, you've got the project, you've got the investors' money in the bank. You can't really turn around and go, oh, I don't really want to give you a personal guarantee. So we ended up doing some stuff that we probably won't do again. If you're going to get development finance, spend some time talking to the guys about the process, whether it's a broker, whether it is the lender. Just try and understand, because they're all different. They've all got different rules. They've all got different criteria. They all use different valuers. All that stuff can change your deal. So just do that homework first, rather than getting caught out at each step like we did. So enough of that one. I'll be glad when we've got tenants in it paying rent, I'll be honest. But you know, we've learned the hard way. So next one is first big project as a contractor. So we set up a construction business in March, possibly the worst time ever to set up a brand new business, but hey ho. This is something that one of our partners, the guy that funded the first project, he bought this building because the letting agent decided that they wouldn't let it out anymore. The current owner had let it get into such a state, it stank, you know, the living accommodation was dire, everything was falling to bits. The very basic compliance stuff was getting done, but that was it. This guy had this building for 30 years, and I estimate he'd spent probably a couple of grand a year on it. These are lovely Victorian villas. They're amazing properties. They're huge. They are such nice properties, but this was known as the Munster House on the rest of the street. Huge trees in front of it. Everything was black. It was covered in crap. People just chucked the rubbish everywhere. It was pretty grim. But fully tenanted in the middle of Didsbury and really cheap. So until the letting agent said they weren't letting it out anymore, this guy was just happy collecting his rent every month and spending it. He had to sell up because he didn't have any money to do what was needed to the property. And luckily, our partner scooped it up. He then came to us and said, can you have a look at this project for us? Just see what you can do with it. And we sort of turned around to him and said, what do you actually need? He's like, well, can you just get a couple of contractors in and sort it out? We were like, we think this might be quite a big job, Tony. Anyway, it is quite a big job. We've put planning in to put some duplexes. We've gone down into the basement. This is probably going to be the thick end of 800, 900k refurb. It's a whacking project. It's a 10-month program, probably a couple of months longer than it would have been because of COVID, but I think that's still pretty good for something of this size. Every bit of plaster we took off. The walls were like Swiss cheese. There was holes everywhere. Things needed putting back together. There was some really dodgy stuff behind what appeared to be a fairly solid building, but it's 120 years old, and you know there was a lot of things that needed fixing that weren't expected, but we've covered it. We've done a good job. Plasterers are in this week. We are probably looking end of Jan, mid-Feb to get it finished, and these will be, we think, probably amongst the best sort of mix of studios and 2 beds and 1 beds. We think they'll be the best flats in West Didsbury. We are biased, but more than happy to show a few of you around if you're interested when we've finished. Key lessons on this. I, with my procurement hat on, said that we could do all the tendering. We can go out to market. I can negotiate with electricians and builders. It's fine. Absolutely not. I didn't understand any of it. So Sean suggested getting one of his pals to work with us, who's a QS he used to work with. And I'm so glad he did that. Otherwise, I'd have, I wouldn't have got through this project. There's so much to the technicalities of the stuff that we're buying, the different, ways to construct things, even putting the stairs in and stuff, the level of detail the guys go into, all the different things. It's astonishing. And he did a cost plan for us at the beginning. And I was like, right, okay. And you know what? There's some things that have gone a little bit up and some things have gone a little bit down. But every month I'm amazed when we go through the numbers, and he's so close. It's just like, fucking hell, we would have been nowhere near. Nowhere near. Definitely, if you're looking at, a reasonable sized project, getting a QS in, I think will save you a fortune. I've mentioned large contingencies. We had already factored that in. We knew some things were coming. We've managed to save in a few other areas, but there was a lot of stuff that needed fixing on this. And last but not least for the case study. So this is pretty early stages. We bought an old solicitor's office in Preston. It's been empty for a little while. It had planning for 15 studios. And when we looked at the plans, the appraisal looked great, but the design, they were all pretty tight. And we've sold a block of flats in the past, and we had problems with some of the flats being less than 30 square meters from an exit point of view. Some mortgage companies won't let you mortgage a flat that's under 30 square meters. So this created us an issue with, are we going to be able to sell them? So we looked at it and went, well, surely if we drop it by a couple on each floor, we can make them a bit nicer. Like, they're still not great flats. It's not a good layout. And then Sean turned around and said, right, I've done it. There's 7. I was like, what? Fucking 7? So that's never going to work. Anyway, we started plugging the numbers in. And actually, it's worked out a tiny bit better because we've added an extra floor. We're going to put a penthouse on the top, which Preston Planning actually suggested. When we rung up and spoke to him, she's like, have you thought about going up? And it's like, we were going to go for the path of least resistance with our planning based on our previous experiences. But we were like, wow, would you be up for that? And they're like, yeah, we're doing it on 3 other buildings on that road. It's like, okay, hell yeah, let's look at that. So we're doing that. It's going to be an awesome project. On the back of this project, we've already made some really good links in Preston. We're speaking to the council about a couple of other buildings. We've made some fantastic relationships with letting agents, sales agents. It's getting us in some doors just by turning up and having a solid plan, a bit of credibility in terms of we've done some projects. But our ethos seems to really be working in terms of getting our point across. We're not here just to knock out another bunch of rabbit hutches. We're here to build some nice accommodation where people are going to want to live. The challenge on this project, or the first challenge on this project, was we got it brought to us by Sosa. That's all good. We then found out someone else put an offer in. So within 4 days of us seeing it, something, we were like, okay, we've done our initial due diligence. It looked like it worked, but we haven't got the cash sorted yet. And we've been chatting to a couple of guys. We've had a couple of introductions. So we were like, okay, well, let's see if those guys were actually serious. Anyway, we got one of them to agree to fund the whole project, just over £1 million. I'd only actually spoken to this guy on the phone twice. Never met him in person because of COVID. But, everything seemed to be going to plan. They showed us, they sent us their proof of funds to support our offer. 3 weeks after our offer accepted, I got a phone call one day, changed our mind. You what? You changed your mind? We've had our offer accepted. Yeah, we've decided to fund another project. I hope that doesn't cause you any problems. They're like, shit, right? Okay, so back to the drawing board we went. And this is literally in the middle of summer when fucking nobody knew what was going on. It was like kids had been at home for a while. Everyone was stressed. No one knew what was going on with the economy. The government didn't really seem to know what they were doing. A lot of the people we could normally pick up the phone to and have a sensible conversation were either fighting fires in their own businesses, had other projects that have got issues. It wasn't a good time to be on the back foot trying to raise cash. So we struggled. We talked to a few people. We got close with a couple, and some stuff started going, going quiet. And we were starting to wonder whether this was a sign and whether it was, we were going to lose the deal. Luckily, we managed to secure some bridging finance. So we bought the building. We're going to get planning, and then when we get planning, we'll go out and secure finance for the new scheme. The lesson learned there was we didn't really know these guys. We knew someone that worked with them. You can tell when people are up against the wall, you need people that you know are in your corner, that are on the same page as you. If you're in the shit, a little bit like Tony was, you know what, guys, I'll just stop charging you interest. Let's not panic. But that was really eye-opening. And even though we don't have 10 projects to go out and find funds for now, we are going finding 10 investors, because we get 3 deals, we will need those 10 investors, because everyone's situation is different. When you go to them, they might have other problems, they might have other issues, they might have cash that they're waiting from somewhere else. We've really needed to up our game in that respect. The other lesson was, obviously, as I mentioned, the planning department suggested chucking an extra floor on. We only started talking to them after we bought the building. If we'd have known that earlier in the process, that would have changed quite a lot of our numbers. It would have made it a more attractive proposition for investors, would have made everything a bit easier. So from now on, when we get our offer accepted, we'll probably start talking to the planning straight away. Okay. Any questions on any of those projects?
Not at the minute, mate.
Okay, cool. That's I think it's called Revit, which is some architectural software of how Cannon Street will look when we're finished with it. So as you can see, it's got 3 front doors. The 2 middle front doors actually go into the rest of the building, but for some reason there's a single door on the left-hand side, and that we're going to keep that as a self-contained flat, and I'm going to retain that as serviced accommodation. So next year is the year that I do serviced accommodation. So look out for the horror stories to come follow that. So my top tips, having learned the hard way, I probably, as a number of people do when they're switching from the other job to property full-time, went a bit too early. I was spending money that we hadn't achieved yet. We were forecasting profits and timeframes on projects that didn't happen. So I've had to dig deep into my savings, pinch money out of my cash flow from my buy-to-lets occasionally, just to keep going. That's not a nice position to be in. I think, doing it again, I probably would have stayed part-time consulting a little bit longer, built up a bit more of a war chest. The other thing, sort of related point to that is, people are quite happy to give you development finance in terms of banks and stuff, as long as you meet their criteria and all the rules. However, they don't like planning risk, so they're not going to lend money to you if it doesn't have planning. If you've got an investor that's willing to take planning risk, they will want quite big returns. Obviously, we've got an architect in-house, so we'll do some of our design work on spec. We can do that. We can look at schemes quite easily. We can knock up a quick analysis of whether it works or not. Not everyone's in that position, so you might need to spend some money to get some of these projects off the ground. But we're tending to find a lot of the opportunities that have planning. Someone's already took the margin off it. There's no margin for a developer to come in now because they've taken all the margin through getting that planning in. That makes it really difficult for us to find anything on the market that stacks. And then my last point is collaboration. So obviously I'm here today sharing some of our stories. I've had a lot of advice from some of the guys who were here. I've had a lot of advice and questions answered from people in the Facebook groups, the WhatsApp groups. A lot of the people we used on our projects, whether it's trades, professional services, have come off the back of those networks. I recommended our QS to another developer yesterday. It circles around. And I think with my corporate background, when we started, I was a little bit reluctant to share that much. And I've actually been impressed how the property space is very different to sort of the big boy corporate shit. Everyone's here to help each other. Everyone's willing to share the war stories if it helps someone else avoid it. And, there are a lot of small individual business owners that want to do their own thing and want the freedom. But I really like the fact that in property, people bend over backwards to help each other. I love that.
I'll just say as well, I'm using Sean. I'm Tony. I said, could you recommend him? And Tony recommended Sean to me. And he's absolutely tip top. So I can vouch for everything Tony's saying there, like 100%. Yeah.
Awesome. So I hope everyone's got a notepad. I'm going to tell you how we value land, and it's not that thing in the top right-hand corner.
Tony, just before we go on, mate, can I just ask a quick question from Louise?
Go for it, buddy.
So could you have the investor funds held with your solicitor so that you have more assurances the investor can't pull the plug on the funds at the last minute? Or is there another way to secure the funds so you aren't let down last minute?
Yeah, I think in that instance, we were really early in the sort of process. You can, I guess you could go and secure £1 million from an investor and get it in your bank so you're ready to go. But what we found when raising finance is that investor wants to know specifically what the project is, where is it, what are the returns, what are the risks. So we do tend to raise on a project by project basis. So getting it early is probably not as feasible, but I'm open to discussion on that. If someone's got other experiences of holding money, I know we've got some people on fixed rates, so we'll give them a fixed percentage return per year. Every year we'll pay their interest. So we do have some arrangements with that in place, but we tend to use that for a little bit of a planning submission. We don't tend to use that as a buying a project cost. Does that answer your question, Louise?
Yeah, thank you. I was just sort of wondering if there was a way to mitigate that risk, and if you could have it sitting with a solicitor, then maybe they'd be less inclined to go to the solicitor and say, I want my money back.
Yeah, that's the dream, to have our own cash sat there so we can fund, at least the initial purchase of some of this stuff. But I think this year's been very difficult for raising finance, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's found it. It's not plain sailing. We're not in the normal environment, and people will retreat and be a bit more cautious. And people are expecting big opportunities next year and the year after. So the people that have already made the money are sort of looking at stuff and going, there might be something better around the corner. Okay, so I'm taking up loads of time waffling on, so I will get through this stuff in a reasonable amount of time. I don't think I should rush it because it's quite intricate. And if anyone's got any questions, please shout. So when I went and started my education, we were looking at buy-to-lets, flips. You get your purchase price, you had your refurb, you had some solicitors' costs, your end value is this, bosh, that's your profit. Sweet. Or that's your cash flow. Cool. When we started doing land appraisals, we were like, okay, so this is the template that we've borrowed off someone. We start off and going, okay, so yeah, all right, so we think they're going to sell for this. All right, cool. Based on what? Next door sold for that. All right, okay. How big was next door? Oh, it's got an extra bedroom. Right, okay. So, comparables won't be new to anyone on this call, I'm sure. But actually the science of how the estate agents work it out was quite interesting. And they're all talking about price per square foot. And me and Sean are like, is everyone not on meters yet? What's going on? It's like, no, they just won't change. So, we will look at a scheme and we'll go, let's use Fallowfield as an example. It's 2 units. They are 120 square meters, so 1,300 square foot. Sales per square foot in that area about 300. So 390, reasonable sales price. Okay, so 780 GDV. We then started talking to people about build costs. As I said in the beginning, we were employing a main contractor for this project. So we had a budget build cost from them, which we calculated our difference. As soon as we got the project and we went to them with the actual contract, little things started getting added to it. Utilities needed to go in. Oh, right, okay, we hadn't thought about that. Well, was that 90 square meter rate? No, that's separate, that. And then there was just little bits just pushing that square meterage rate up. Oh, we don't like the tiles that you've spec'd. Or we're not putting Howden's kitchen in it. No chance. So, we added to that build cost quite a bit by speccing it. We should have specced it in more detail at the beginning. We're now in a position where we could go and tender some of our projects if we wanted to use contractors. At this time, we didn't have that many people that wanted to work with us. We were a risk, we were a liability. Taylor Wimpey. So I know one of the land managers at Taylor Wimpey. Sorry. They're building for just under 1,000 square metre at the minute. Taylor Wimpey are one of the biggest house builders in the UK, if not the biggest. I can't remember who's top. We're building at about 1,600 quid a square metre using a main contractor. We think by doing it with our own guys and our own supply chain, we can probably get to 1,300, 1,400 quid. These are new build costs that I'm quoting at the minute. But you see there's a huge variance there. Taylor Wimpey can do it for less than 1,000. At the worst end, if you're a newbie developer, you're probably paying 1,600, 1,650, something like that. We always budget 10% of our build cost for professional fees. So that's architect, surveys. Does it need an asbestos survey because you're demolishing a garage or something? Does it need a site report because it might have been contaminated land before? Is it near a floodplain? All those little things that are like 500 quid here, 500 quid there, they soon back up. Our finance costs, we budget 1% a month. Now, you should be able to, in terms of development finance, better 10% per annum. But bear in mind, you need to forecast your mobilisation period. So from when you buy the land to when you get on site, you're going to lump a chunk out for the cost of the purchase at the beginning. You've then got the build program, which, you know, for new build, if you're doing a smallish scheme, less than a year should be easily achievable. We did start in just over 10 months, I think. Fallowfield took a bit longer because of COVID. But then we've got the sales period as well. And when we said we were going to sell all our units off plan because they were going to be so great, the surveyor laughed at us. And they stuck another 4 months interest on the back. So it's not going to take that long. It was like, well, if you don't take all that time, then it's a bonus. But don't factor in that you're going to sell them on day one straight away. Stack costs and utilities, things like electric, water, connections can vary wildly depending on where you are, how far away you are from the nearest connection. At Stahl, we had BT wanting to charge us £4,000 per house to put in internet, put in fibre, which is ridiculous. On a bigger estate, they'll do it for free. But if you're a small developer working on small scale new build scheme, it's up to them what they charge you, and it can vary wildly. Marketing costs, I've already mentioned, Joe's been helping us. We've ramped up our marketing, our website, our brochures. We're using some fancier CGIs. You know, all that stuff is upfront cost. You need to factor in some of the bigger developers, people like Dandara, they'd forecast 10% of their GDV for marketing. We're probably between, if you count the agency fee as a rough percent, just as a guide, we're probably between 2 and 3 per scheme. But that's, you know, that's significant on a £1.5 million project. Holding costs for at the end when you finished it, insurance, obviously you've got to keep them as unoccupied buildings, council tax, Manchester City Council will be on your door the minute you finish your project with the council tax bill. Some of the other councils are a bit more laid back, but Manchester's pretty harsh. And then hopefully after all those costs, you make some profit. So profit needs to be in excess of 20% for most lenders to look at it from a development finance point of view. If you're not making close to that, there's so many areas you can lose a bit of the cash, you can drop a bit in terms of sales. Sales values drop by 5%, you're at 15%. Build costs go up by 10%, oh shit, you're at 12%. Project runs on for 3 months, oh right, okay, you know at 8, it's easy for that 20%, although it feels huge when you're looking at it, going, oh, that's 400 grand there. It's easy for that to get eroded. And it's very, very quick how it happens. Once you've added up all those costs and the profit, take it away from the GDV, and you should end up with the $1 million question, which is how much is that piece of land worth? And I reckon we look at, I've been to see 8 plots this week already. I think in the last couple of years, I've probably looked at 1,000 opportunities, and we've probably took forward about 20 to get serious, and we've only done 3. So that our success rate at the minute of finding stuff, that works, that is good value, that is stuff that we want to do. We spend a lot of time looking at appraising stuff that doesn't go anywhere. That might not be, I'm not saying we're perfect, but, it might be the fact that we're a little bit picky in some areas. We're a little bit more flexible now with the sort of stuff we'll do. We don't want it all to be high end. We'll look at things like affordable and stuff if we can make it work for us. So I had a quick look last night. I thought I'd run you through something that was actually an example. So if you go on Rightmove, you look at commercial rather than just the buying. You go for commercial for sale, pick your area, filter it for land and development. Now, Northwest is, I see the same stuff all the time. So the stuff that's overpriced, stays there for ages. The stuff that's any good disappears pretty quick. This is a building plot in Macclesfield. I spoke to the agent this morning to get a bit more intel. Basically, the guys on the other side of the road had huge gardens, and they've put in together and gone in for planning, and they're now trying to sell these plots. So following the same process I've just done, and this literally took me 15 minutes last night with the kids crashing around in the background. So once you get it into the process, it's fairly straightforward to do. So these are planning for 3-bed houses. They're quite contemporary, they look very pretty, lots of glass, which is important when you're looking at your build costs and stuff. It did have a size on it. Quite a lot of the time it doesn't. So you've got to try and figure out how big the units are from the planning. Looking at this, you know, similar stuff on that estate, and there's a lot of these linked detached houses that are about 250, 300k. For a new build house, you'd expect a premium of 10%. That's fairly standard across the estate agency world, as that's a rule of thumb. So you'd be looking at 330, 350 tops on these. Spoke to the agent this morning, they expect 375, but he said that was punching. So I think 350 is probably reasonable. Rough build costs, I've gone for something in the middle of the road, 1,500 quid a square metre, using a main contractor. It's a small plot, so you don't have much economies of scale. Now, you may get a builder who can turn up and do this with his own lads who are employed by him for 1,200, 1,300 that can make this plot work. But if you're a developer and you want to outsource the contracting, then you're going to be looking at circa 1,500, I reckon, especially in the Northwest. So again, professional fees, contingencies, connections, bit of marketing, total cost before you finance, we're up at 624. You need to give the land some value, so let's call it 100k just for argument's sake. So you've now got 724k's worth of cost, 10% finance costs. Okay, so that splits out about 800k's worth of cost in total. So your overall profit, if you took this scheme forward, is minus 100,000. So your actual land is worth nothing. The agent has got offers invited for this at 250k. So that would be one that we'd be chucking in the bin. As I said, you might get a local contractor that can do that for 1,200, 1,300 quid a square metre, and they might be happy with the work, keeps them in work for 6 months. They might be able to, you know, get rid of some of that contingency, eke out a little bit more. They might get away with not doing any marketing and just paying an estate agent. You know, there is room for some movement in that. But as an appraisal that you're going to take to the bank or an investor and borrow some money, you know, I don't think those are unreasonable costs. And that's how we get lots of things that we just end up throwing away. So any questions on that? Sorry, I flew through it because I'm conscious of time.
There's no questions in the chat box there, but if anybody wants to ask anything, feel free to unmute yourself.
That's because it was so comprehensive, Paul.
I'd say, Tony, what would you say has been your biggest takeaway from it? You learn something different on each one, don't you?
Yes, and you know, hopefully you don't make the same mistakes every time.
Yeah.
You know, we've gone from 2 guys sat in the pub that had a couple of buy-to-lets and some architecture experience to within 2 years we've got a construction business. We've knocked out £2 million worth of GDV's projects. We've got a pipeline of about 5. You know, we feel like we've built a strong little team, but it's been hard. And, you know, trying to get away from those 80-hour weeks working for a corporate and fucking ended up doing it somewhere else.
Should
But that's not said to put anyone off. I love the freedom. I work with one of my best mates. We do what we want when we want.
Yeah.
But, you know, we are working here hard to build a business, and, you know, the responsibility of taking on people and making sure they've got work for the next couple of years isn't without its consequences.
I think what I found was I went from being the expert in my niche, which was, you know, 2-bed terraces to flips and stuff like that, and then HMOs and stuff like that. And then when I started doing this, I was like, I'm the T-boy here. And it was literally just, for me, it was letting go. And just letting go and trusting, bringing the people in around me and just trusting the people around me. That was some, you know, and it's surrounded. I think from what you said there, you know, I've taken that. There's a lot of similar lessons. It's just getting the right team around you for something like this. You just, you know, you're not going to be able to put drawings together, get a good architect and getting the right contractors and stuff like that. And you literally will find you just kind of sat there, not really doing much other than moving the pieces around the board. But the buck stops with you, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and I completely resonate with that. There's so many things that I can't do. It's almost a blessing that I can't. So I do find the right people most of the time to help us with that stuff, but I do feel like a little bit of an orchestra conductor.
Yeah. Love it, mate. It's amazing.
Tony, I've just got a question there for you, mate. Can the lenders pull a development finance if the market drops?
So, depends at what stage you're at. So we use a company called Assets for Fallowfield, who have been very, very good. I know a lot of people that have used other lenders that had projects halfway through. They stopped answering the phones mid-projects. They weren't answering the valuation emails. You know, that's obviously not great if you're halfway through a project. And there's a lot of the stuff that I see on Rightmove at the minute, it's half finished stuff. And I wonder whether it is because lenders have been pulling stuff. You know, I've spoken to brokers, I've spoken to private investors over the summer, and they were all saying, oh yeah, you're not the only one, guys, that's had an investor pull out or a lender pull out. So, you know, it depends at what stage you are. I'd say if your agreements are signed and you've already drawn down your first payment, they're probably less likely to pull it. But up until you get that first payment, then I guess there is a bit of a risk. Some of the stuff that's coming through now, I don't know whether anyone's heard about CBILS. So it's the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. So if you've got a big trading business, you could get a whacking loan. But if you're a developer, you can actually access some development finance via CBILS, which is free for 12 months. So it's 0% finance for 12 months. They pay your fees, your monitoring fees, your solicitor's fees at the beginning. You know, that's a really powerful tool, and we didn't know about that. We haven't spotted it in all the noise of bounce back loans and all that stuff. You know, that's an awesome thing. Now,
what's that called?
So it's called CBILS, CBILS.
Yeah.
And there's a number of lenders who would normally do development finance to offer it, Andy.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of them will do it just for existing clients, but there are a number of providers that are hawking it around on social media and stuff.
Right.
They all got given a set amount of cash depending on how big they were as a lender.
Yeah.
And they've got to use that pot, and that pot is backed by the government. So it's a little bit stricter in terms of the margins and the valuations and stuff.
Yeah.
However, it is essentially free money for 12 months.
Yeah. Is it similar to sort of Homes England, that sort of neck of the woods?
It's better than Homes England.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's mental.
Okay.
We've been trying to find a project with planning for the last 2 months that we could get to use it, because our lender's banging on our door trying to give us it.
Yeah. Amazing. I'll look into that today. Thanks, mate.
No worries.
Perfect. Well, Tony, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. That was a killer talk. I think everyone will agree.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it, guys. If you've got any other questions that you think of afterwards, or you hit a stumbling block on something you're looking at in the future, feel free to get in touch. If we're not already connected, I'm on all the usual social business. You've got an exciting plot of land in the northwest. I would like to hear from you today.
Tony, I might have something you might want to look at together, mate.
All right, cool. Give us a shout, man.
Yeah, I'll give you a nudge over it, okay, mate?
All right, cool. Right, thanks very much, guys. I really enjoyed it. Hope you have too. All right, cheers.
Rendezvous.